In the quiet hours of the evening, when the world begins to dim and the noise of the day softens into a distant hush, the mind becomes open to long-forgotten stories. This is the time when history speaks most clearly, not through dates or maps, but through the gentle echoes of civilizations that once pulsed with life and then slipped away. It is in this twilight space between waking and dreaming that we find the most bizarre, improbable, and wondrous cultures to ever appear on Earth. Civilizations that by every logical measure should not have existed, yet somehow did. Human history is often told like a grand march. The rise of mighty empires, the innovation of technologies, the steady progress from ancient times to the present. But this is only the bright, central road. Beyond it lies a shadowy landscape of forgotten worlds. Communities shaped by mysteries, by accidents of geography, or by ideas so unusual they don't seem to belong to any known timeline. They thrived in deserts without rivers, on islands so isolated they might as well have been separate planets, in mountains that scrape the clouds, or in jungles thick enough to swallow memory whole. Some built cities without streets. Others created art so strange that modern eyes can barely recognize it as human. A few engineered feats that defy explanation even now, while others left behind nothing but whispers, forcing archaeologists and storytellers alike to fill the silence with speculation. These were civilizations that played by rules no one taught them, societies that grew in directions no historian would predict, then vanished with barely a trace. As we drift gently into this journey together, imagine the world as a vast, ancient tapestry. On its surface, you see the woven patterns everyone recognizes: Rome, Egypt, China, Mesopotamia. But beneath those, pressed into the threads like faint fingerprints, lie the patterns we rarely notice. Subtle swirls of culture and belief. Strands of experimentation. Unexpected bursts of brilliance. They form a hidden layer of humanity's story, one touched by mystery and softened by time. It is easy to assume that the past was simple, predictable, orderly. That people always moved from hunter-gatherer bands to farming villages, from villages to cities, from cities to empires. But reality is far stranger. Many of the civilizations you will hear about tonight do not follow any recognized path. They break the sequence. They bend the pattern. They remind us that history is not a straight line, but a constellation of possibilities, some bright, some dim, all quietly astonishing. Consider for a moment how unlikely it is that so many unique cultures blossomed against the odds. A people who built elaborate temples before inventing farming. A society that organized thousands of residents without kings, armies, or streets. An isolated culture that developed pottery older than nearly every ancient civilization we've ever studied. A Bronze Age world whose masks and statues resemble something more cosmic than earthly. A desert kingdom whose legacy is carved in a stone, but whose voices are almost completely silent. These are not the stories of powerful conquerors or sprawling empires. They're the stories of the strange, the improbable, the quietly extraordinary. And as strange as each may seem, they teach us something essential about what it means to be human. They show our capacity for imagination, adaptation, and resilience, not only in familiar ways, but in ways so different they feel almost impossible. The further we travel into the past, the more these impossible societies reveal themselves. Some thrived in abundance, others in hardship. Some mastered the sea, crossing distances that challenge modern sailors. Others built monumental structures without wheels or beasts of burden. Some created belief systems so layered and symbolic that even now, their rituals leave scholars guessing. And a few, rare, haunting few, seem to have vanished almost deliberately, as if they intended to retreat from history's gaze. Yet they were real. People lived in these worlds. They laughed, argued, loved, built, dreamed, and feared just as we do now. They raised children, buried elders, crafted stories to explain thunder and starlight, and shaped their surroundings with extraordinary creativity. Their lives, though obscured by centuries, still reach us in fragments. Shards of pottery, carved stones, faint outlines of homes, abandoned temples, and symbols we strain to decode. Tonight, we walk gently among those fragments, not to force answers or chase sensational theories, but to let the quiet strangeness of these civilizations speak for itself. This journey is meant to be slow, peaceful, immersive, a gradual descent into the soft glow of ancient places where certainty fades and wonder takes its place. You are invited to listen the way one listens to waves at night, patiently, without expectation, open to whatever rises. As the path unfolds, each civilization will reveal its own paradox. Some will appear ahead of their time. Others will seem untouched by it. Some will challenge the boundaries of archaeology, while others dissolve neatly into myth. The contrasts between known and unknown, light and shadow, fact and speculation, will guide the rhythm of our exploration. For every solid piece of evidence, there will be a question mark. For every truth, a whisper of the inexplicable. And so, before we step into the first ancient settlement on this journey, take a slow breath. Allow the boundaries of the modern world to fade just a little. Imagine the Earth as it was long before maps, before borders, before the loud certainty of textbooks. Imagine communities living in ways so unusual that even today we struggle to comprehend them. Civilizations that should not exist according to the rules we think we understand. Yet somehow, beautifully, undeniably, they did. From this quiet threshold, our journey begins. In the soft glow of early dawn, long before the first written records, a remarkable settlement rose quietly on the plains of ancient Anatolia. Today we call it Catalhoyuk, but for those who lived there nearly 9,000 years ago, it was simply home, an interconnected world of rooftops, shared walls, painted rooms, and rituals woven into everyday life. When archaeologists first uncovered this place, it challenged almost every assumption we have about the earliest cities. Nothing about Catalhoyuk is ordinary, and even now, with decades of research behind us, its very design feels like a puzzle deliberately created to unsettle our expectations. Imagine approaching this settlement in its prime. There are no streets, none at all. Instead, you would see a crowded mosaic of rectangular homes pressed tightly against one another, like cells in a honeycomb. The city seems sealed from below, impenetrable from the sides. The only way in is from above. People climbed wooden ladders and entered their homes through small rooftop openings, stepping down into rooms lit only by flickering firelight and the faint glow of polished white plastered walls. Life in Catalhoyuk flowed, not horizontally, but vertically, with the rooftops serving as walkways, gathering places, and a main network of movement across the entire settlement. The absence of streets is more than an architectural oddity. It reveals an entire worldview built around closeness, cooperation, and perhaps a shared defense against the unknown. With homes so tightly knit, daily life unfolded in close proximity. Neighbors not only shared walls, they shared rhythms, sounds, smoke from hearths, and the scent of meals cooked in clay ovens. Yet despite this closeness, there is no evidence of kings or chiefs, no palaces or elite quarters, no monumental structures announcing dominance or hierarchy. Instead, Catalhoyuk appears almost defiantly equal, as if its people chose community over command. Inside these simple, mud brick homes, life and spirituality blended seamlessly. Walls were often decorated with vivid murals, leaping animals, geometric patterns, perhaps even scenes of storytelling or ritual. Some rooms held plastered bucrania, cattle skulls embedded into the walls, their curved horns jutting out like sentinels of an ancient belief system. These were not casual decorations, but symbols carefully placed, renewed, and preserved across generations. They speak of a world where the line between the spiritual and the everyday blurred, where art was not separate from living but a natural part of it. Each home also held the presence of the past in a literal sense. Beneath the floors, families buried their dead, sometimes dozens of individuals in a single dwelling, layered in quiet repose beneath the very beds where the living slept. This practice created a powerful sense of continuity. A child might grow up never realizing they walked each day over their ancestors. And when a house reached the end of its life, it was filled with debris and sealed, becoming a silent foundation upon which new homes were built. Generations stacked their memories one atop another, creating a multi-layered mound of human experience. Despite the richness of its physical remains, Catalhoyuk leaves us with profound mysteries. How did thousands of people live so harmoniously in such dense conditions without clear leadership? What beliefs guided their rituals? Why did they choose this specific style of architecture, so unlike anything around them? And perhaps most puzzling of all, what compelled them to voluntarily abandon this thriving settlement after centuries of occupation? Some scholars suggest it was environmental change, floods, shifting resources, or disease crops. Others wonder if internal changes in social structure or belief practices slowly drew people outward in search of new forms of life. But Catalhoyuk offers no clear answers. It keeps its secrets close, hiding them beneath layers of plaster, clay, and silence. Life here was not static. The people of Catalhoyuk were skilled farmers, cultivating wheat and barley, tending sheep and goats, gathering wild fruits and nuts. Their survival was a balanced partnership with the land. And yet, despite their agricultural success, they maintained certain traditions that seem older, almost prehistoric. Ritual feasting, complex burial customs, the symbolic use of animal remains. The settlement feels suspended between eras, both advanced and ancient at the same time. And this, perhaps, is the essence of its strangeness. Catalhoyuk contradicts the story we usually tell about early civilization. According to that story, cities emerge after strong leaders take control, after social classes form, after architecture grows larger and more complex. But here, none of that happened. Instead, a large, dense, stable community flourished without hierarchy, without streets, and without monumental public spaces. Everything we think we know about how cities begin seems to unravel in its presence. As we walk through the rooms in our imagination, the air thick with the smoke of fires long extinguished, we sense that this was not merely a place of survival. It was a place of meaning. People painted their walls again and again, refreshing designs with careful hands. They positioned symbolic objects with deliberate intent. They crafted figurines, some simple, some astonishingly detailed, perhaps representing ancestors, spirits, or ideals. These objects raise as many questions as they answer. Some appear to depict animals or women in calm, seated poses. Others are abstract, defying clear interpretation. Do they represent deities? Fertility? Seasons? Cycles of life and death? Archaeologists continue to debate, but the truth remains elusive. In this dense network of homes, each doorway opening from above, each hearth burning quietly in the evening, we glimpse a unique rhythm of urban life. People gathered on rooftops at dusk, sharing food, stories, and rituals under the open sky. Children played among the chimneys and ladders. Elders watched the horizon from flat terraces. The city had no grand entrances, no wide avenues, no towering monuments. It was the collective itself that was monumental. And so Catalhoyuk stands as a contradiction, a peaceful enigma, a city that refused the blueprint later civilizations would follow. It should not exist in the form it does, yet it did, thriving for centuries. In its rooftops, murals, and buried ancestors, we find a reminder that human societies are capable of forms far more diverse and imaginative than our textbooks suggest. As we leave this silent, labyrinthine settlement behind, the light begins to shift once more, guiding us toward another civilization that challenged expectations. From a city without streets, We move gently to a society that engineered perfect urban grids long before such ideas took root elsewhere. The mystery deepens, and the journey continues. Far to the east, along the fertile plains of the Indus River, another civilization emerged, one that challenges almost everything we think we know about the dawn of urban life. Stretching across what is now modern Pakistan and northwest India, the Indus Valley Civilization arose around 3,300 BCE and flourished for nearly 1,000 years. Unlike the chaotic sprawl of many ancient settlements, this civilization was meticulously planned, remarkably uniform, and astonishingly advanced. Its cities, Harappa, Mohenjo-daro, and hundreds of smaller settlements offer a vision of order and precision that seems almost impossible for their time, especially given the relative absence of monumental rulers or palaces to enforce it. Imagine entering Mohenjo-daro at sunrise. Streets run straight and true, intersecting at perfect right angles. Houses built from uniform baked bricks rise along narrow lanes. Water flows quietly through covered drains, and every home has its own private bathroom and bathing area, a feature not seen in many parts of the world for thousands of years afterward. The contrast is striking. A society so methodical and hygienic, yet shrouded in silence. There are no inscriptions proclaiming kingship, no monumental temples dictating belief. Instead, order appears to have arisen organically, emerging from shared understanding, a collective discipline, and perhaps a deep respect for the urban environment itself. Their writing, the still undeciphered Indus script, adds another layer to the mystery. Thousands of seals and inscribed objects have been found, often featuring animals, symbols, and geometric motifs. Each mark speaks to a sophisticated system of communication, yet its meaning remains tantalizingly out of reach. Was it a method of administration, a system of trade, or something entirely ceremonial? Without a Rosetta Stone, scholars are left to interpret patterns, distributions, and parallels, and the silence of the script keeps the civilization enigmatic. Unlike Egypt or Mesopotamia, we cannot read the thoughts or ambitions of the Indus people directly. We can only infer them from the structures, artifacts, and objects they left behind. Trade and craft were clearly central to their way of life. They imported precious stones from distant regions, fashioned jewelry of carnelian and gold, and created pottery and tools with striking uniformity. Each object suggests both aesthetic sensibility and technical mastery. The people of the Indus Valley may have been ordinary in appearance, but their society was extraordinary in its sophistication. What makes it more perplexing is that it seems to have arisen spontaneously. There are no clear predecessors in the region that hint at a gradual development towards such planning and skill. The civilization appears almost fully formed, as though the blueprint for city organization and social coordination had been realized in a single generational leap. The scale of their cities is staggering. Mohenjo-daro alone may have housed as many as 40,000 residents. And yet, for such a dense population, there is remarkably little evidence of social inequality. Large public buildings exist, such as granaries and baths, but there are no massive palaces or tombs to indicate centralized authority. The Great Bath of Mohenjo-daro, a vast, meticulously constructed pool, is thought to have been used for ritual cleansing, but whether it was sacred or merely practical remains unknown. This is a society that managed to maintain harmony and order on a large scale without apparent coercion or domination, a feat as astonishing as the layout of its streets. The contrast between their sophistication and the mystery of their disappearance is what lingers most hauntingly. Around 1900 BCE, many Indus Valley cities were abandoned. Floods, shifts in river courses, or climate change may have played a role, yet the precise reasons remain unclear. Unlike empires that collapse under conquest, these cities seem to have simply faded from view, leaving behind ruins that spoke of order and achievement, but not of the final story. What drove these people to depart? Did they migrate, merge with other cultures, or simply adapt to a new way of life that left no trace? The answers are obscured beneath centuries of sediment and silence. Their urban achievements were matched by social and spiritual complexity. Figurines suggest reverence for a mother goddess, for animals, and possibly for elements of nature. Many artifacts display symmetry, repetition, and careful proportions, implying a worldview attentive to harmony, balance, and aesthetic order. Religious beliefs, if we may call them that, seem inseparable from everyday life. Homes, workshops, and public spaces were all designed with consideration, hinting at a culture in which the spiritual, practical, and artistic realms were deeply entwined. Another extraordinary aspect of the Indus Valley civilization is its networked connectivity. Cities were laid out according to remarkably consistent patterns, suggesting communication and coordination across hundreds of miles. Bricks were standardized in size, a subtle signal that there was a shared understanding or even regulations governing construction practices. Trade routes carried goods to Mesopotamia and beyond, linking this civilization to distant cultures while maintaining a distinct identity. Even as their world thrived, it existed in quiet parallel to the great kingdoms of the Near East, almost unnoticed, almost independent. Yet, despite its brilliance, the Indus Valley leaves more questions than answers. How is such a system of planning, trade, and urban management achieved without obvious rulers? How do they maintain social cohesion over vast areas for centuries without recorded laws or monumental proclamations? And most mystifyingly, how could a civilization of this scale and sophistication disappear so completely, leaving only faint echoes for modern archaeology to interpret? Each question deepens the sense of wonder, drawing us further into the tension between what we can observe and what we can only imagine. As we explore the ruins in our minds, the Indus Valley feels almost like a dream. Streets aligned with mathematical precision, houses with private wells, granaries storing food for the community, all suggest a society that had mastered the art of urban life long before we assumed it could be mastered. Yet the silence is profound. We cannot hear their voices, cannot read their words, cannot be certain of their intentions. This tension between knowing and not knowing, between what was real and what is inscrutable, makes the Indus Valley one of the most compelling and bizarre civilizations history has ever produced. Leaving the precise streets of Mohenjo-daro behind, we begin to drift further back in time and geography, toward another culture that defied chronological expectations. Here, we will encounter a people who lived for thousands of years without agriculture dominating their existence, creating art and ritual that seems to transcend the ordinary path of human development. If Catalhoag challenged our understanding of community and Mohenjo-daro stunned us with its urban brilliance, the next civilization beckons with an entirely different kind of mystery, one of longevity, continuity, and art woven into the very soil of everyday life. The journey continues, deeper into the improbable yet undeniable tapestry of human history. Far to the east, across seas and mountains, lies the rugged archipelago of Japan, where one of the most extraordinary and enigmatic civilizations of prehistory quietly flourished for thousands of years. Known to archaeologists as the Jaman people, they lived not in sprawling cities, nor under the command of kings or emperors, but in scattered villages and settlements that reveal an astonishing degree of cultural complexity and creativity. Stretching from around 14,000 BCE to roughly 300 BCE, the Jaman period represents a continuity and sophistication rarely seen in prehistoric societies, challenging our assumptions about what it means to build a civilization without the structures most of us expect. No monumental architecture, no written language, no large-scale agriculture dominating daily life. The Jaman people were primarily hunter-gatherers, yet they were far from the simple, wandering existence we often imagine when we think of pre-agricultural societies. They exploited the rich resources of their environment with remarkable skill. Forests provided nuts, fruits, and wild game. Rivers teemed with fish. The coastlines offered shellfish, seaweed, and marine mammals. Their settlements were often semi-permanent, allowing communities to flourish for generations in a single location. Pit houses were dug into the earth, with thatched or wooden roofs, creating spaces that were both practical and intimate, a protective embrace against the cold winds of the Japanese winter. These were homes where life and ritual intersected seamlessly, where daily survival was interwoven with art, ceremony, and symbolic practice. What makes the Jaman civilization truly extraordinary is the art they left behind. They created pottery so intricate, so distinctive, that it is among the oldest in the world, dating back more than 10,000 years. These vessels, often adorned with raised chord patterns, swirling motifs, and elaborate shapes, were not purely functional. They were objects of beauty, meaning, and perhaps even spiritual significance. Some are so delicate, with ornate flaring rims and elaborate decorations, that they appear almost ceremonial. Each pot tells a story, though we cannot always decipher its language. It is a story of a people attuned to rhythm, texture, and pattern, whose lives were inseparable from the natural and spiritual worlds around them. The artistry of the Jaman extended beyond pottery. Small figurines, known as dogu, depict human forms with exaggerated features, large eyes, flaring hips, elaborate decorations, and intricate geometric patterns. Their purpose remains a matter of debate. Were they fertility charms, ritual objects, or representations of deities? Perhaps they were a combination of all three. Each figurine embodies a worldview in which symbolism and the sacred permeated everyday life. These creations suggest a people deeply aware of cycles, of life and death, of nature's patterns, of the unseen forces that shaped existence. In these objects, we encounter a civilization that revered life not as a series of practical tasks alone, but as a tapestry threaded with mystery, imagination, and profound reverence. Unlike many early civilizations, the Jaman did not rely heavily on agriculture, though they practiced rudimentary forms of plant cultivation. They instead mastered a hybrid lifestyle that blended foraging, fishing, hunting, and limited horticulture. This balance allowed them a flexibility and resilience that few contemporaneous societies could achieve. They did not need to dominate their environment. They lived within it, subtly shaping the land through careful use rather than extensive clearing or irrigation. The result was a culture that could sustain itself for millennia without succumbing to the pressures that often destabilized early agricultural societies elsewhere. What is even more remarkable is the longevity of the Jaman culture. Thousands of years passed with continuity in artistic motifs, settlement patterns, and ritual practice. Unlike other civilizations that rose and fell over centuries, the Jaman endured, quietly evolving yet retaining core elements of their identity. Their settlements are scattered but interconnected, revealing networks of trade, communication, and shared cultural norms. Obsidian tools, beads, and shells moved across islands, suggesting that even in relative isolation, human creativity and exchange flourished. This was not a people in decline. It was a civilization quietly thriving in harmony with its environment, leaving behind a subtle but profound legacy for those who would come after. Despite this endurance, the Jaman world remains mysterious to modern eyes. We do not know the exact structure of their societies, how they resolve conflicts, or how they organize themselves politically. Yet the evidence suggests a degree of social cohesion that allowed large communities to coexist peacefully for generations. Ritual sites, communal spaces, and the careful placement of figurines indicate that social and spiritual life was deeply embedded in the rhythm of daily existence. Their civilization challenges the conventional narrative that cities, writing, or hierarchical governance are necessary to sustain complex human societies. Here, sophistication arises from harmony, creativity, and shared cultural knowledge rather than formalized authority. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the Jaman is their apparent disappearance, not as a result of conquest, but as a gradual transformation. Around 300 BCE, many Jaman settlements began to decline as agricultural practices, introduced from the continent, reshaped Japan's cultural landscape. Yet even in this transition, the echoes of Jaman artistry and ritual persisted, subtly influencing subsequent civilizations. The people did not vanish entirely. They evolved, merged, and contributed their rich symbolic heritage to the next chapter of Japanese history. In this way, the Jaman civilization exemplifies a quiet endurance, an invisible hand shaping the future even as the past recedes. As we imagine walking through a Jaman settlement at dusk, the air scented with wood smoke and the sea breeze, we sense a life that is deliberate and mindful. Children play among pit houses, women tend to the hearth, men fish along riverbanks. Doga figurines sit near fire pits, watching over daily life, while decorated pottery waits patiently to hold the harvest or the ceremonial offerings. The rhythm of life is slow, deliberate, and full of intention. There is a deep sense of balance, a quiet understanding that survival and beauty, function and ritual, necessity and imagination are inseparable. This civilization teaches us that complexity does not always manifest in monumental architecture or written laws. Sometimes it appears in the subtle patterns of daily life, in the hands of artisans, in the spiritual resonance of objects left behind. The Jaman period also reminds us of the fragility of historical memory. For centuries, much of what we now know about these people remained obscured beneath the forests and soils of Japan. It is only through careful excavation, patient study, and the attentive listening of archaeologists that their world slowly emerges. And yet, even with all the evidence, so much remains uncertain. The meaning behind motifs, the exact function of figurines, the reasons for settlement choices, the intricacies of social structures. Each discovery invites more questions than it answers, deepening the sense of wonder and reminding us that history is rarely neat, straightforward, or fully knowable. Leaving the islands of Japan behind, we carry with us the impression of a civilization that endured quietly, creatively, and mysteriously for millennia. The Jaman people reveal that human ingenuity takes many forms, and that sophisticated societies can arise without kings, armies, or sprawling urban centers. They offer a perspective that challenges assumptions, reminding us that the measure of a civilization is not always in its monuments, but in its adaptability, artistry, and spiritual depth. The Jaman civilization, in its subtle brilliance, stands as a testament to the extraordinary possibilities of human life, even in contexts that, to modern eyes, seem improbable or impossible. As the sun sets on this chapter, we feel a transition in the air, a gentle pull toward a world where survival took on an entirely different form, where monumental feats of engineering and art defy reason, where landscapes were reshaped to mirror cosmic principles, and where civilization itself seems to flirt with the impossible. From a Jaman who thrived quietly and artistically, we move toward the astonishing constructions of the Americas, toward civilizations that left not just figurines and pottery, but cities, pyramids, and symbols that challenge our understanding of time, labor, and imagination. The journey continues, deeper into the improbable, the bizarre, and the undeniable. Far across the Pacific, along the arid coasts of present-day Peru, another astonishing civilization quietly took root, defying almost every expectation of what early societies needed to thrive. Known as the Norte Chico, or Carol Civilization, it emerged around 3000 BCE, long before the Great Pyramids of Egypt or the first cities of Mesopotamia, and yet it developed a level of sophistication that seems almost impossible given its environment. Stretching across the Supe, Fortaleza, and Wara river valleys, Norte Chico consisted of more than 20 urban centers, some of them monumental in scale, yet their society seems to have thrived without a written language, without ceramics, and with surprisingly little reliance on agriculture as we usually understand it. It is a civilization that challenges the very blueprint of human progress. Imagine walking along the coastal plains of Norte Chico. Towering pyramids, platforms, and ceremonial mounds rise abruptly from the desert landscape, their precise stone construction catching the harsh sunlight. Yet these structures were not defensive fortresses, nor were they royal tombs filled with gold. They were places of ritual, social gathering, and community cohesion. The largest site, Carol, may have supported as many as 5,000 inhabitants, a number modest by some standards, yet extraordinary when one considers the environmental constraints. The people of Norte Chico harnessed the rivers and developed irrigation systems to support limited agriculture, particularly cotton and squash, but much of their sustenance came from the sea. Fish, shellfish, and marine birds provided vital protein, creating a society balanced delicately between land and water. One of the most remarkable features of Norte Chico is its monumental architecture. The pyramids and platform mounds, some rising more than 60 feet high, were constructed with precisely cut stones and earth packed to exact specifications. They appear almost impossibly massive, considering the lack of metal tools or draft animals. How thousands of workers coordinated these efforts without written instructions, without rulers issuing commands, remains a profound mystery. Labor seems to have been organized around shared religious or social purpose, suggesting a collective vision rather than coercive control. It is an early example of a society where belief, ritual, and communal effort created structures that still awe us millennia later. Yet for all its monumental construction, Norte Chico left behind surprisingly few artifacts in the way we normally expect. Pottery was rare or absent, and there is no evidence of elaborate art or figurines akin to those of contemporary civilizations. Music and instruments, however, have been found, flutes crafted from bone, resonant and haunting, hinting at ceremonies filled with rhythm, sound, and spiritual experience. It is as if this society expressed its sophistication not through material accumulation, but through communal performance, architecture, and ritual. Their civilization seems deliberately understated, emphasizing function, harmony, and symbolic resonance over ostentation. Perhaps even more perplexing is the absence of clear signs of warfare or defensive structures. Norte Chico existed for centuries with no evidence of armies, fortifications, or violent conquest. Its cities appear peaceful, and the monumental constructions were clearly not intended as protection. This suggests a society organized around cohesion, spirituality, and shared labor, rather than coercion or domination. Social complexity arose not from hierarchy imposed by force, but from collective endeavor, ritualized cooperation, and a deep understanding of the environment's limitations and potentials. The economy of Norte Chico also challenges conventional narratives of civilization. Where most early urban centers relied heavily on staple crops to sustain dense populations, Norte Chico drew heavily from the sea, cultivating cotton as a critical crop for textiles and fishing nets rather than for immediate consumption. This allowed a unique economic model. The production of tools, clothing, and nets from cotton supported both daily life and large-scale fishing operations. Surplus resources could then support monumental construction and ceremonial life, demonstrating a sophisticated understanding of the interplay between labor, environment, and social need. It was a civilization that balanced practicality with symbolic purpose in ways we are only beginning to understand. Religious and ceremonial life appears to have been central to Norte Chico's identity. The large plazas, pyramids, and sunken circular courts hint at complex ritual gatherings. Scholars suggest that these spaces may have been venues for feasting, music, and other communal activities that reinforce social bonds. The society seems to have invested enormous energy into creating collective experiences that united people, perhaps in ways even more binding than laws or coercion. In a desert landscape that could easily have fostered scarcity and conflict, ritual and shared purpose appear to have been the glue holding the community together. And yet, like many of the civilizations we have explored, Norte Chico also poses haunting questions. Around 1800 BCE, its cities were largely abandoned, and the society faded into obscurity. Why? Some hypothesize climate change, alterations in river patterns, or the depletion of marine resources may have played a role. Others suggest social transformation or the merging of communities into other emerging Andean cultures. Whatever the cause, the civilization vanished with little trace in the way of written records, leaving only stone pyramids, platforms, and the faint echoes of flutes long silenced by time. We are left to imagine the rituals, the gatherings, and the lives that once animated these monumental yet eerily quiet spaces. The contrast between the physical enormity of Norte Chico and the ephemeral nature of its cultural artifacts deepens the mystery. Here was a society capable of feats that rivaled those of contemporary civilizations in Egypt or Mesopotamia, yet communicated and maintained cohesion without the tools we often consider essential: writing, widespread art, or ceramics. High in the heart of the Valley of Mexico, long before the Aztecs claimed it as their own, rose a city that would astonish the world with its scale, organization, and mysterious influence. This was Teotihuacan, a civilization that flourished between roughly 100 BCE and 550 CE, leaving behind sprawling avenues, massive pyramids, and a cityscape that once housed over 100,000 inhabitants. Unlike other ancient metropolises, Teotihuacan's origins remain shrouded in ambiguity. We do not know the name of its founders, the language they spoke, or even the precise nature of their political hierarchy. And yet, the evidence of their civilization is strikingly tangible, etched into stone, painted on walls, and aligned with the cosmos itself. Walking along the central thoroughfare, the Avenue of the Dead, one can almost feel the pulse of the city as it must have existed centuries ago. Lined with temples, palaces, and residential compounds, the avenue stretches for more than 2 miles, creating an urban rhythm that suggests deliberate planning, social stratification, and a vision of grandeur. Teotihuacan was a city designed for both function and spectacle, balancing practical urban living with monumental expressions of power and cosmology. Its builders understood architecture, hydraulics, and city planning on a scale that continues to awe modern engineers, all without metal tools or draft animals. Every stone placed, every structure oriented, tells of a civilization that harmonized human labor, religious ritual, and cosmic alignment in a single, coherent vision. At the city's center rise the two most iconic structures, the Pyramid of the Sun and the Pyramid of the Moon. The Pyramid of the Sun, immense and symmetrical, dominates the landscape, rising over 200 feet and constructed with millions of stone blocks and earth-filled platforms. Its orientation and positioning are no accident. Archaeologists and archaeoastronomers have long noted its alignment with celestial events, particularly the movements of the sun. The Pyramid of the Moon, slightly smaller yet equally imposing, sits at the northern terminus of the Avenue of the Dead, providing balance to the city's spiritual and architectural axis. Together, these pyramids create a landscape that is as much symbolic as it is functional, a reflection of a civilization attuned to both the heavens above and the social order below. The city's residential compounds reveal yet more about daily life in Teotihuacan. Unlike the palaces of Europe or the monumental homes of Mesopotamia, these living spaces were communal, with multiple families sharing courtyards, kitchens, and living areas. Walls were adorned with murals depicting gods, rituals, and abstract symbols, offering glimpses into a society that expressed its beliefs visually rather than in written words. These murals suggest a civilization rich in spirituality, myth, and possibly a complex pantheon of deities, some recognizable today through their influence on later Mesoamerican cultures. Life in Teotihuacan was communal, ritualistic, and interwoven with the symbolic meaning of the city itself. Trade and economy were central to Teotihuacan's prosperity. Obsidian, the volcanic glass prized for its sharp edges, was mined in nearby regions and traded throughout Mesoamerica. The city also produced pottery, textiles, and luxury goods that circulated widely, suggesting a sophisticated economy capable of supporting a dense urban population. Yet despite its scale, there is remarkably little evidence of a central monarchy or a singular ruler. Power seems to have been diffused among elite lineages or religious authorities, creating a model of governance that relied on consensus, ritual authority, and control of resources rather than coercion alone. This decentralized sophistication challenges our assumptions about how cities achieve monumental accomplishments and social cohesion. The spiritual life of Teotihuacan permeates every aspect of the city. Temples, pyramids, and ceremonial platforms align with the stars, planets, and cardinal directions, indicating a cosmology deeply embedded in urban design. Scholars have suggested that Teotihuacan functioned as a pilgrimage center, drawing devotees from distant regions to participate in rituals, offerings, and festivals. The alignment of buildings, the placement of murals, and the ceremonial use of human and animal offerings all hint at a civilization where the sacred and the mundane were inseparable. To inhabit Teotihuacan was to live within a universe carefully ordered by both human hands and celestial forces, a city where architecture, ritual, and daily life converge seamlessly. Yet for all its sophistication and influence, Teotihuacan remains profoundly enigmatic. The names of its rulers are lost to history, its written language undeciphered or perhaps never developed, and the reasons for its decline still debated. By the 7th century CE, the city had undergone significant depopulation and destruction, and the once bustling avenues fell silent. Was it climate change, internal unrest, or external invasion that brought about its decline? Scholars continue to speculate, but the truth may remain forever elusive. The city that once radiated power, faith, and ingenuity now survives primarily as stone, shadow, and memory, leaving us to reconstruct its life from what remains. The influence of Teotihuacan extended far beyond its immediate valley. Trade networks and cultural interactions suggest that its impact reached as far as the Maya lowlands, Oaxaca, and even Central America. Architectural styles, ritual practices, and iconography spread, embedding Teotihuacan's legacy in cultures that followed. Its decline did not erase its influence. Rather, it seeded the rise of civilizations such as the Aztecs, who revered Teotihuacan as a sacred ancestral city. This remarkable endurance, even after abandonment, reflects the enduring power of human achievement. How a civilization, even in silence, can continue to shape generations long after its people have vanished. Walking among the ruins today, it is impossible not to sense the duality of Teotihuacan, a city of order and mystery, of human ingenuity and unknowable purpose. The vastness of its structures inspires awe, while the gaps in our knowledge invite reflection, humility, and wonder. We see a civilization that achieved urban, architectural, and social sophistication beyond what its environmental and technological constraints might have allowed. We see humans reaching for permanence, beauty, and cosmic alignment, and yet simultaneously surrendering to forces we cannot fully understand. In this interplay of mastery and mystery, Teotihuacan embodies the paradox of all great ancient civilizations. Leaving the sun-baked avenues of Teotihuacan behind, our journey now shifts from the highlands of Mexico to the forests and river valleys of Southeast Asia, where another improbable civilization would rise, the Khmer Empire of Angkor. If Teotihuacan taught us about monumental urban planning, spiritual architecture, and the endurance of mystery, Angkor will reveal a civilization that mastered water, stone, and art on an even more monumental scale. From deserts to rivers, mountains to jungles, we see a recurring pattern. Civilizations are rising in ways that defy expectation, thriving under unusual conditions, and leaving legacies that continue to baffle and inspire. The improbable yet undeniable story of human ingenuity unfolds again, guiding us further into history's most astonishing chapters. Deep in the heart of Southeast Asia, nestled within the lush forests and winding rivers of present-day Cambodia, emerged a civilization that would astonish the world with its scale, ingenuity, and harmony with nature. The Khmer Empire, which flourished between the 9th and 15th centuries CE, produced Angkor, a city and complex of temple cities whose grandeur rivals the most iconic urban centers in human history. Unlike many other civilizations whose ruins speak primarily of stone and conquest, Angkor's story is one of water, agriculture, engineering, religion, and artistic mastery intertwined. Its survival, evolution, and eventual decline remain wrapped in mystery, leaving modern observers both humbled and fascinated. To approach Angkor is to enter a landscape where human ambition and environmental intelligence converge. Canals, reservoirs, and intricate water management systems crisscross the region, turning the monsoon-soaked plains into a vast, irrigated expanse capable of sustaining hundreds of thousands of people. This hydraulic mastery was no mere practical measure. It reflected an understanding of ecology and seasonal cycles, a delicate balancing act that allowed Angkor to thrive where other civilizations might have succumbed to floods or drought. The city itself, sprawling across hundreds of square kilometers, was meticulously planned, with temples, palaces, and civic areas arranged according to cosmological principles, harmonizing the earthly and divine. The crown jewel of this civilization is undoubtedly Angkor Wat, the temple complex that has become the symbol of Cambodia. Built in the early 12th century under King Suryavarman II, Angkor Wat is more than a religious monument. It is an architectural manifesto, a symbolic representation of the universe itself. Rising from the jungle, its central towers mimic Mount Meru, the sacred mountain in Hindu cosmology, and its vast bas-reliefs depict epic tales from the Ramayana and Mahabharata. Yet Angkor Wat is not an isolated marvel. It is part of a broader urban and spiritual landscape that includes Angkor Thom, the Bayon Temple, Ta Prohm, and countless other structures, forming an interconnected network of devotion, governance, and daily life. This interweaving of function and faith, of city and ritual, is a hallmark of Khmer ingenuity. One of the most astonishing aspects of Angkor is the scale of labor and organization required to build and maintain such an empire. Massive sandstone blocks, quarried many kilometers away, were transported, carved, and assembled with astonishing precision, creating temples that continue to endure centuries of weather and neglect. The sheer manpower required to construct Angkor Wat and its sister temples suggests a society with sophisticated administrative structures, capable of mobilizing, feeding, and coordinating tens of thousands of workers. Yet despite this complexity, inscriptions and records provide tantalizingly little about the people themselves. The names of many builders, artisans, and even rulers have been lost, leaving a civilization whose legacy is monumental yet enigmatic. Religious life was central to the Khmer identity, evolving over time from Hinduism to Mahayana Buddhism and eventually Theravada Buddhism, each layer leaving its mark on Angkor's architecture, art, and social organization. Temples were not merely places of worship. They were the heart of urban life, political authority, and cosmic representation. Kings were often portrayed as divine or semi-divine figures, rulers whose legitimacy was intertwined with their ability to maintain harmony between the earthly realm and the spiritual cosmos. This fusion of religion, politics, and urban planning created a society where belief, governance, and daily life were inseparable, and where monumental stone structures became both symbols and instruments of social cohesion. The Khmer economy was equally remarkable, reflecting both ingenuity and adaptation to the environment. Extensive rice cultivation, supported by reservoirs and canals, provided a stable food supply, while trade networks extended across the region, linking Angkor with China, India, and the broader Southeast Asian archipelago. Goods, ideas, and religious practices flowed freely along these routes, enriching the cultural and technological fabric of the empire. Unlike other civilizations that relied on conquest and coercion, Angkor thrived through a combination of agricultural productivity, urban planning, and religious authority, demonstrating a unique approach to sustaining a vast population in a challenging landscape. Yet, for all its sophistication, Angkor remains cloaked in mystery, particularly regarding its decline. By the 15th century, the city had largely been abandoned, overtaken by the encroaching jungle, and its population dispersed. Scholars debate the causes. Prolonged droughts, environmental mismanagement, internal rebellion, and external invasions are all cited as potential factors. Archaeological evidence suggests that the city may have suffered from both ecological strain and political fragmentation, a combination that gradually eroded its ability to sustain such monumental ambitions. The jungle, which once provided resources and concealment, ultimately reclaimed the stone temples, shrouding the city in both literal and symbolic obscurity. Walking through the remains of Angkor today, one senses a civilization that sought to shape the world with order, devotion, and aesthetic brilliance, yet remained at the mercy of forces beyond human control. Towering stone faces of the Bayon Temple gaze down from temple spires, silent witnesses to centuries of ritual, governance, and human aspiration. Ta Prohm, with its massive tree roots intertwining with crumbling walls, offers a haunting reminder that even the grandest human creations are transient when faced with nature's inexorable persistence. And yet, despite the jungle's reclamation, the ingenuity of the Khmer civilization continues to resonate, inspiring awe and scholarly curiosity alike. The Khmer Empire also offers profound lessons in contrast. The delicate balance between human mastery and natural vulnerability, between monumental ambition and everyday life. The city's water management system, for example, was both a technical marvel and a potential source of collapse when overextended or mismanaged. Its temples were magnificent and enduring, yet the people who built them remain largely anonymous. These contrasts, power and fragility, permanence and impermanence, infuse Angkor with an almost dreamlike quality, the kind of layered mystery that draws historians, travelers, and dreamers alike to its overgrown terraces and sun-dappled courtyards. The enduring influence of Angkor is visible not only in Cambodia, but across Southeast Asia. Its architectural styles, religious iconography, and urban planning principles spread through the region, shaping later kingdoms and empires. Even centuries after its abandonment, Angkor inspired reverence and pilgrimage, reflecting the timeless power of human ingenuity and the resonance of a civilization that achieved extraordinary heights under improbable circumstances. It is a reminder that civilizations can rise, flourish, and vanish in ways that are both logical and inexplicably poetic, leaving legacies that continue to illuminate human potential. As the sun sets over the stone spires of Angkor, casting long shadows across ancient causeways and reflecting in the tranquil reservoirs, we are left with a profound sense of wonder. Here was a society that transformed a floodplain into a monument to human creativity, faith, and resilience. Its accomplishments invite reflection not only on the technical prowess of its people, but on the values, beliefs, and visions that made such achievements possible. Angkor whispers across time, reminding us that human civilization is not merely measured by conquest or written records, but by our ability to shape, inhabit, and revere the world we inherit. Leaving the lush landscapes and monumental temples of Angkor behind, our journey now shifts across continents to the enigmatic civilizations of sub-Saharan Africa, where the city-states of Great Zimbabwe and its surrounding kingdoms challenge assumptions about early African urban development. Sangsingdui, nestled in the Sichuan Basin of China, remains one of the most bewildering archaeological enigmas the world has ever encountered. Unlike the long-documented dynasties of the Yellow River, Sangsingdui seems to emerge suddenly, a civilization with no obvious predecessors and no clear successors. Its discoveries began in 1929, but only in the 1980s did systematic excavations reveal the astonishing scope of its culture. What archaeologists found was beyond anything anticipated. Enormous bronze masks with exaggerated, almost alien features, intricately carved jade artifacts, and ceremonial objects that suggest a sophisticated spiritual life. The masks themselves are particularly haunting. Eyes wide and staring, sometimes pointed upward, mouths open in expressions that seem frozen between awe and anguish. Their exaggerated proportions have led to whispered speculation that the Sanxingdui people saw the world through a lens radically different from their neighbors, a lens that challenges our assumptions about human creativity and perception. The mystery is intensified by the sudden appearance of these artifacts in the archaeological record. There are no clear signs of a gradual development of bronze technology leading up to Sanxingdui, and yet here are massive bronze statues and ceremonial objects crafted with skill that rivals contemporaneous civilizations, such as those in Mesopotamia or Egypt. Unlike other Bronze Age societies that were often driven by conquest, hierarchy, or expansion, Sanxingdui leaves almost no evidence of defensive architecture or large-scale warfare. The people seem to have invested enormous resources into ceremonial life and artistic expression, suggesting a culture deeply attuned to ritual and spirituality. Adding to the enigma is the spatial layout of their settlements and sacrificial pits. Entire complexes appear to have been intentionally buried, sometimes in layers, as if to preserve them for posterity, or perhaps to hide them from some unknown threat. Some scholars propose that Sanxingdui may have represented a migration of a people from the west or southwest, but the artifacts are so stylistically unique that this explanation only deepens the puzzle. The bronzes, jade masks, and gold foils bear almost no resemblance to anything else in ancient China, implying an independent cultural evolution or perhaps a lost branch of civilization that had no parallel. The artistry of Sanxingdui is mesmerizing in its abstraction. Some masks are deliberately disproportionate, with wide eyes, flared nostrils, and exaggerated ears, while other objects hint at animals or mythical creatures that cannot be easily categorized. Their symbolic language remains largely undeciphered. Were these figures deities, ancestors, or spirits? Did the exaggeration of features reflect spiritual significance, social hierarchy, or something else entirely? Every discovery seems to raise more questions than it answers. Even the way the pits are arranged suggests an intentional choreography, ritualized deposition rather than random discard. This deliberate placement adds another layer of mystery, hinting at a civilization highly conscious of space, symbolism, and cosmology. What makes Sanxingdui even more fascinating is its sudden disappearance. Around 1200 BCE, the archaeological record abruptly ends. There is no evidence of gradual decline or assimilation into neighboring cultures. It is as if the civilization simply vanished, leaving behind only these extraordinary artifacts, like messages in bronze and jade sent across the centuries. Scholars have debated potential causes: natural disasters, floods, earthquakes, or the shifting course of rivers in the Sichuan Basin might have driven the population away. Others suggest internal upheaval or spiritual reasons for abandoning sacred sites. The truth is that we may never know. The Sanxingdui story resonates so strongly because it embodies a broader theme seen in other impossible civilizations. Here, human ingenuity, artistry, and spiritual devotion appear fully formed in a place and time where, according to conventional narratives, such sophistication shouldn't exist. This civilization challenges our linear understanding of history and reminds us that human culture is far more diverse, experimental, and surprising than textbooks often admit. Listening to the echo of Sanxingdui, one is struck not just by the artistry, but by the profound reminder that some societies rise, shine brilliantly, and then retreat into the mists of time, leaving only fragments to speak of their wonder. As we move on from Sanxingdui, we carry with us the sense that history is not a straight line of progress. Sometimes, brilliance appears suddenly and then vanishes, leaving only a trail of questions. And in that silence, the imagination fills the void, inviting us to consider what humans are capable of when conditions, beliefs, or sheer creativity conspire to produce the extraordinary. The masks, the bronzes, the jade, they are more than artifacts. They are echoes of a civilization that dared to be unlike any other, and in their mystery, they gently guide us to the next chapter of human wonder. The Olmec civilization, which flourished between 1200 BCE and 400 BCE in the tropical lowlands of what is now southern Mexico, remains one of the most enigmatic cultures in ancient history. Despite being referred to as the mother culture of Mesoamerica, since their influence is felt in nearly every subsequent culture of the region, the Olmecs remain something of a mystery in their own right. Little is known about their language, religion, or the nature of their society. What stands out most are the colossal stone heads they left behind. Massive, meticulously carved statues, each weighing several tons and carved from basalt, a stone far removed from their homeland. These heads, each with distinct facial features, have become iconic symbols of the Olmec civilization, yet they only deepen the mystery of who these people were and what they believed. The heads themselves are a striking contrast to the civilization's relatively minimalistic material culture. Unlike the grand pyramids of Egypt or the palaces of Mesopotamia, the Olmec left behind no massive structures for everyday life, no monumental palaces or fortresses, and no written records that can offer insight into their kings or rulers. What they did leave behind were these massive stone faces, each carved with a unique expression, often with distinct helmets or headdresses that suggest they may have been representations of rulers or deities. The size, the detail, and the apparent effort involved in creating these heads suggest a highly organized society, one capable of mobilizing labor on a monumental scale. But why such a focus on these oversized, impassive visages? And who were these heads meant to represent? Theories abound, ranging from suggestions that the heads were portraits of rulers or priests to more speculative ideas that they might represent supernatural beings or gods. What complicates matters even further is the fact that the Olmec left no written language behind. While other ancient civilizations like the Egyptians or the Sumerians produced extensive records of their rulers, laws, and achievements, the Olmec did not. This absence of written history has fueled countless debates over their true nature. Were they a peaceful society focused on ritual and religious life? Or did they have a more complex political structure that involved warfare, conquest, or territorial expansion? Some scholars have suggested that the Olmec were not just a group of city-states, but a unified confederation with a shared religious or cultural system. Yet there is no definitive evidence to confirm this. The Olmec also seem to have possessed a surprisingly sophisticated understanding of art, mathematics, and astronomy. They are credited with developing a form of writing, a precursor to the glyph-based systems that would later be used by the Maya and other Mesoamerican cultures. But this writing system has yet to be deciphered. Similarly, they are believed to have practiced an early form of the Mesoamerican ball game, an activity that would later become central to many cultures in the region. The Olmec were also skilled in creating intricate jewelry, figurines, and other ritual objects, some of which depict jaguars, snakes, and other animals that were significant in Olmec mythology. The presence of jaguar imagery, in particular, suggests that the Olmec may have had a strong connection to the animal world, possibly associating themselves with the power and mystery of a jaguar as a symbol of the spiritual realm. Yet for all their artistic and technological achievements, the Olmec civilization faded away long before the rise of the more well-known Maya or Aztec cultures. By around 400 BCE, the Olmec centers were abandoned, and their culture seemed to dissolve into the mists of time. Their sudden disappearance is a source of considerable intrigue. Some scholars suggest that environmental factors, such as flooding or soil depletion, might have played a role. Others propose internal social or political upheaval, which might have led to the collapse of their society. It's also possible that the Olmec, as a culture, simply evolved into something else, merging with other regional powers to give birth to the Maya or Zapotec civilizations. But the lack of definitive evidence makes this an open question, one that adds to the mystery of the Olmec. Perhaps one of the most intriguing aspects of the Olmec civilization is the way it remains at the heart of Mesoamerican culture, influencing nearly all of the great civilizations that followed. The Maya, Zapotec, and Aztec all inherited aspects of Olmec art, architecture, and religious practices, particularly their emphasis on ritual and symbolism. The colossal heads, in particular, have been cited as a direct precursor to the monumental stone figures and pyramids of later Mesoamerican cultures. This influence, coupled with the fact that the Olmec were apparently the first to establish a complex system of city-states in Mesoamerica, raises an important question. If the Olmec were so ahead of their time, why do they remain so elusive? The absence of written records and the lack of clear answers to questions about their culture, politics, and religion give the Olmec a mythic quality. The Aksum Empire, an ancient kingdom that flourished from around 100 CE to 940 CE, was once one of the most powerful and influential civilizations in Africa. Yet, despite its grandeur, Aksum remains relatively obscure in mainstream history. Situated in the northern highlands of present-day Ethiopia and Eritrea, the Aksumites constructed a civilization that rivaled the empires of Rome and Persia. At its height, the empire stretched across the Red Sea, encompassing parts of modern-day Saudi Arabia and Yemen, making it a key player in international trade networks between Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. The empire's achievements in architecture, commerce, and religion were monumental. Yet for centuries, its story has largely been overshadowed by other great empires of antiquity. One of the most striking features of the Aksum civilization was its use of massive stone obelisks, tall, intricately carved monoliths that still stand today as silent witnesses to the past. These obelisks, some of which are over 20 meters tall, were not simply decorative. They serve as symbols of power and perhaps tomb markers for kings and nobility. The largest of these obelisks, known as the Great Obelisk, once stood at over 30 meters in height before it collapsed. It is a testament to the Aksumites' advanced knowledge of engineering and their ability to manipulate heavy stones, despite the lack of metal tools to cut or transport them. The sheer scale of these obelisks, combined with their precision, suggests that Aksumite society had a highly organized structure and an impressive command of resources. In addition to their architectural feats, the Aksumites were known for their sophisticated trade networks. The empire was strategically located at the crossroads of Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, making it a central hub for commerce. The Aksumites controlled the vital trade routes that passed through the Red Sea, trading goods such as gold, ivory, frankincense, and myrrh. These commodities were in high demand across the Roman Empire, the Arabian Peninsula, and even as far as India. The Aksumite economy thrived because of its ability to produce and control the flow of these precious goods, which made the empire incredibly wealthy. This prosperity allowed Aksum to develop a vibrant culture, with an impressive array of art, pottery, and jewelry, much of which can still be seen in museums today. Perhaps most fascinating of all, the Aksumites were one of the first civilizations in the world to officially adopt Christianity. In the 4th century CE, King Ezana of Aksum converted to Christianity, making it the state religion. This was a bold and transformative move, especially considering that Christianity had not yet spread throughout much of the Roman Empire. The Aksumites' conversion to Christianity marked them as a unique civilization at the time, distinct from both the polytheistic religions of the ancient Mediterranean and the animistic beliefs that dominated much of sub-Saharan Africa. The introduction of Christianity also influenced the Aksumite architecture and art, with churches being built in the distinctive style of Ethiopian Christianity. The legacy of this early adoption of Christianity can still be seen in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, which traces its origins back to the Aksum Empire. Despite these remarkable achievements, the Aksum Empire eventually fell into decline, and by the 10th century CE, it had largely disappeared from the historical stage. There are several theories as to why the empire faded. Some scholars suggest that the rise of Islam in the 7th century CE disrupted the Aksumite trade routes, as the Arabian Peninsula became a powerful force in the region. Others point to environmental factors, such as soil depletion and the collapse of agricultural systems, which could have led to economic stagnation. The Aksumites may also have faced internal political strife, with various factions vying for control in the later stages of the empire. Whatever the cause, the fall of Aksum left a vacuum of power in the Horn of Africa, and the once thriving empire was eventually replaced by smaller, regional kingdoms. Despite the mystery surrounding its fall, Aksum's influence never truly disappeared. The empire's legacy lives on through its remarkable contributions to African history, particularly in the areas of religion, culture, and trade. Many modern-day Ethiopian traditions, including their language, Guizi script, and religious practices, can trace their roots back to the Aksumites. The story of the Aksum Empire serves as a reminder of the long and complex history of Africa, one that is often overlooked or misunderstood in the broader context of world history. Aksum's relative obscurity in the public imagination is partly due to the fact that its decline coincided with the rise of other more dominant powers in the region. The great empires of West Africa and the spread of Islam across North Africa overshadowed Aksum's legacy. However, the Aksumite Empire stands as a testament to the complexity of African civilizations, with its monumental achievements that predate many of the Western world's famous empires. The Kingdom of Aksum was not just a regional power, but a civilization that left its mark on world history, one that for too long has remained hidden in the shadows of time. The rediscovery of Aksum and its contributions to human history is an ongoing process, as archaeological teams continue to unearth artifacts and study the empire's remaining monuments. With every new finding, we are reminded that history is not a static record, but a constantly unfolding story, one that still holds many mysteries. The rise and fall of the Aksum Empire may be a tale of forgotten power, but its legacy is far from forgotten. As we continue to explore its ruins, both physical and cultural, we learn more about a civilization that once stood at the crossroads of the ancient world, its monumental obelisks still standing tall as silent witnesses to a forgotten superpower. Catalhoyuk, located in modern-day Turkey, is one of the oldest and most intriguing urban settlements ever discovered. Dating back to around 7,500 BCE, it challenges our understanding of what a city should look like and how humans organized their earliest communities. Unlike the well-planned streets of later cities, Catalhoyuk appears almost chaotic at first glance, with tightly packed mud brick houses abutting one another so closely that streets, as we know them, simply do not exist. Residents entered their homes through holes in the roofs, climbing down ladders into their living spaces, a design that would seem counterintuitive to modern eyes, but made perfect sense within their social and environmental context. This unusual layout immediately raises questions. Why build a city without streets? And what does it reveal about the social dynamics of this early society? One of the most fascinating aspects of Catalhoyuk is its dense communal living. Houses were often connected, forming clusters where neighbors were constantly in close contact. Privacy, as we understand it today, was minimal, yet archaeological evidence suggests that the community thrived under this arrangement. Interiors were carefully organized, with areas dedicated to sleeping, cooking, and ritual activities. Walls were adorned with elaborate murals and reliefs depicting humans, animals, and abstract symbols, indicating that art and spiritual expression were central to daily life. The absence of streets may have been a deliberate choice, creating a sense of cohesion and shared identity rather than individual separation. The city feels intimate, almost womb-like, with human life folded in upon itself. The ritual and symbolic life of Catalhoyuk further enhances its mystique. Archaeologists have uncovered shrines and altars within individual homes, as well as burial sites beneath floors. The placement of these burials, often accompanied by offerings, suggests a society deeply engaged with ancestor worship and spiritual practice. Animals, particularly bulls and felines, frequently appear in wall paintings and figurines, pointing to a symbolic cosmology that connected humans, animals, and the divine. Unlike many later civilizations, Catalhoyuk shows no signs of centralized temples or palaces. Religious life was interwoven with domestic life, blurring the boundaries between the sacred and the everyday. In this way, the city becomes not just a place of habitation, but a living spiritual landscape where architecture, art, and ritual converge. The economic and practical life of the city is equally remarkable. Despite the absence of streets, Catalhook's residents managed a stable agricultural system, cultivating wheat, barley, and legumes while keeping domesticated animals such as sheep and goats. Storage rooms within homes suggest careful planning and resource management. Trade networks extended beyond the immediate region, bringing obsidian and other exotic materials into the settlement, hinting at connections with distant communities. All of this activity took place within a seemingly chaotic urban layout, proving that human ingenuity can thrive even in environments that defy conventional urban planning. Perhaps one of the most puzzling aspects of Catalhoyuk is the lack of evidence for formal political hierarchy. Unlike later cities, there are no palaces, fortified walls, or administrative buildings that would indicate the presence of kings or ruling elites. Instead, the community seems to have operated on a more egalitarian model, with social cohesion maintained through shared rituals, art, and daily cooperation. This egalitarianism, combined with architectural innovation, suggests that human societies can achieve complexity without centralized authority, a lesson that continues to resonate with scholars today. The city's rise and eventual decline, around 5700 BCE, remains equally mysterious, with environmental changes, soil depletion, or shifting trade patterns all proposed as possible contributing factors. Catalhoyuk's strange urban form also invites broader reflection on the nature of civilization. Here was a community capable of sustaining thousands of residents for centuries, building a rich artistic and spiritual life, yet doing so in a way that completely defied later expectations of streets, walls, or hierarchies. The city reminds us that the story of human development is not linear. Innovation and cultural sophistication often appear in unexpected forms. The people of Catalhoyuk teach us that architecture, social organization, and spirituality can take many paths, each uniquely adapted to its environment and values. As we leave Catalhoyuk, it is impossible not to marvel at the creativity and adaptability of its people. Their choice to build a city without streets, to intertwine domestic life with ritual practice, and to cultivate art and symbolism in every corner, makes Catalhoyuk one of the most thought-provoking chapters in the history of human civilization. It challenges our assumptions, nudging us to see that even in the earliest days of urban life, humans were capable of creating complex, beautiful, and deeply mysterious societies. The city's dense, ladder-accessed rooftops, the intimate communal spaces, and the silent shrines beneath the floors whisper of a world both alien and familiar, offering a glimpse into the ingenuity and resilience of our distant ancestors. The Nabateans, an ancient people who rose to prominence around the 4th century BCE, were master architects, traders, and engineers whose civilization thrived in the harsh deserts of the Middle East. Their most famous legacy, Petra, a city carved directly into rose-colored cliffs, stands as a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. What makes the Nabateans so remarkable is not just the beauty of their monuments, but the way they harness the unforgiving desert environment to create a thriving society. Unlike civilizations that relied on fertile land or abundant water, the Nabateans turned scarcity into strength, mastering the art of water management and engineering to survive where others could not. They transformed rocky canyons into bustling urban centers and trade hubs, demonstrating a level of adaptability and creativity that feels almost impossible to modern observers. Petra, often called the Rose City for the color of its sandstone cliffs, was far more than a decorative wonder. The city's layout reveals careful urban planning and advanced engineering. The Nabateans carved monumental facades directly into cliff faces, including temples, tombs, and palaces, with each structure aligned to both the natural contours of the canyon and, often, celestial phenomena. Their use of natural terrain to protect and enhance the city suggests an acute understanding of both aesthetics and strategy. Petra was not only beautiful, but functional. The cliffs provided defense against potential invaders, while the intricate water collection and storage systems sustained life in a region where rainfall was minimal and unpredictable. Central to the Nabateans' survival was their unparalleled mastery of water engineering. In the desert, water is life, and the Nabateans developed sophisticated channels, cisterns, dams, and aqueducts to collect and store rainwater. They captured seasonal flash floods, redirecting them into reservoirs that could sustain the city year-round. This mastery of hydraulic engineering allowed them to support a population larger than most desert settlements of the time and to cultivate gardens and agricultural plots that would have seemed impossible in such arid surroundings. The Nabateans' approach to water was not merely practical. It was a form of environmental artistry, turning scarcity into abundance and blending human ingenuity seamlessly with nature. Petra also served as the heart of an extensive trade network, linking the Mediterranean world with the Arabian Peninsula and beyond. The Nabateans controlled the caravan routes that transported frankincense, myrrh, spices, and precious stones, creating immense wealth and influence. Their trading expertise enabled them to thrive economically and culturally, fostering a society capable of producing fine art, sophisticated jewelry, and intricately carved monuments. This combination of engineering, commerce, and artistry allowed the Nabateans to maintain independence and prosperity in a region dominated by larger empires, including the Greeks and later the Romans, who were impressed by Petra's beauty and strategic importance. Despite the grandeur of Petra, the Nabateans' civilization remains enigmatic. Much about their language, religious practices, and political organization is still unknown. Inscriptions and relics suggest a polytheistic belief system, with gods connected to fertility, water, and protection. Temples and tombs were often elaborately decorated, hinting at a rich spiritual life intertwined with the material achievements of the society. Yet the absence of detailed written records leaves many questions unanswered. How was power distributed? Were there kings, councils, or priestly elites guiding the city? The gaps in our knowledge add to the sense of wonder and mystery surrounding this desert civilization. Another striking feature of the Nabateans is the subtle elegance of their architecture. Unlike other monumental constructions of the ancient world, which often relied on brute force and sheer scale, Nabatean structures demonstrate a refined balance between natural form and human design. The facades of Petra, with their intricate carvings and harmonious proportions, emerge organically from the cliffs, almost as if the city had grown from the rock itself. This fusion of environment and architecture creates an ethereal quality, reinforcing the impression that the Nabateans were not only engineers and traders, but artists who understood the poetic potential of stone and space. The Nabateans' achievements are even more remarkable when one considers the adversity of their environment. Petra sits at the edge of the Arabian desert, where scorching temperatures, unpredictable rainfall, and rugged terrain would have defeated less resourceful societies. The Nabateans transformed these constraints into opportunities, creating a city that is both defensible and sustainable, blending practicality with artistry. Their ability to thrive in such conditions speaks to a broader theme found in many of the world's most impossible civilizations. Human creativity and resilience often flourish where it seems least likely, producing innovations that continue to inspire admiration thousands of years later. The Jaman people, who inhabited the Japanese archipelago from roughly 14,000 BCE to 300 BCE, represent one of the most fascinating prehistoric cultures in the world. Long before the rise of agriculture in Japan, the Jaman had established a remarkably sophisticated way of life, characterized by semi-sedentary settlements, intricate pottery, and a deep engagement with the natural world. Their name, Jaman, means cord-marked, referring to the distinctive patterns pressed into their pottery, a craft that is considered among the oldest in the world. These early artisans were not merely practical potters. Their work demonstrates an extraordinary sense of aesthetics, with elaborate designs, intricate shapes, and sometimes even figurative forms that evoke animals, spirits, and abstract ideas. Their creations suggest a culture deeply attuned to beauty and symbolism, long before written records or centralized states emerged in the region. One of the most striking aspects of the Jaman culture is their ability to combine artistic expression with practical function. The pottery, often elaborately decorated with swirling patterns, cords, and protrusions, was used for storage, cooking, and ceremonial purposes. Unlike many contemporary cultures, which prioritized function over form, the Jaman blurred these lines, creating objects that were both useful and visually captivating. Archaeologists have uncovered a variety of vessel types, from simple bowls to towering, almost sculptural pieces that suggest ritual significance. Some of these vessels are so large and ornate that they could not have been used for everyday cooking, pointing to ceremonial or spiritual functions. This combination of artistry and utility highlights the Jaman people's unique perspective. Life, function, and aesthetics were intertwined. Beyond their pottery, the Jaman developed complex settlements that were surprisingly sophisticated for a pre-agricultural society. Communities often consisted of pit dwellings arranged in circular patterns, sometimes around central plazas that may have served as communal spaces for ritual, trade, or social gatherings. The semi-sedentary nature of these settlements indicates that the Jaman were able to exploit the abundant natural resources of the islands, including fish, shellfish, nuts, and wild plants, to sustain relatively large populations. Their dependence on hunting, gathering, and fishing did not prevent them from creating enduring, permanent settlements. Another feature that challenges the conventional narrative that agriculture is a prerequisite for complex society. In this sense, the Jaman were pioneers, demonstrating that culture, artistry, and social organization could flourish without the plow or domesticated animals. The spiritual life of the Jaman people adds another layer to their mystery and fascination. Numerous figurines, known as dogu, have been found throughout Jaman sites, often with exaggerated eyes, limbs, and body shapes. Scholars speculate that these figurines were used in ritual practices, possibly to ensure fertility, protection, or healing. The sheer variety and creativity of these objects reflect a rich symbolic world, one where human life, animals, and the environment were interconnected in complex ways. The Jaman worldview appears to have celebrated the cycles of nature and the sacredness of daily life, a perspective that resonates across centuries. Unlike many later civilizations that left written laws or historical chronicles, the Jaman communicated their beliefs through art and material culture, leaving behind a visual language that continues to intrigue and inspire. Another remarkable feature of the Jaman is their longevity and adaptability as a culture. Over thousands of years, they maintained continuity in pottery styles, settlement patterns, and subsistence strategies, while also evolving new techniques and designs. This long duration suggests a stable, resilient society capable of adapting to environmental changes, including shifts in climate and sea levels. Their endurance also hints at sophisticated knowledge of local ecosystems, seasonal cycles, and resource management, enabling them to thrive in a diverse and sometimes challenging environment. In many ways, the Jaman challenge modern assumptions about prehistoric people. They were not primitive or static, but innovative, creative, and deeply connected to the world around them. The influence of the Jaman culture extends far beyond their own time. While they were eventually absorbed into the Yayoi culture, which introduced wet rice agriculture and new social structures, the Jaman legacy persisted in art, spiritual practices, and community organization. Even today, the distinctive cord-marked pottery and the mysterious dogu figurines continue to captivate archaeologists, historians, and artists, providing a window into a world where human creativity and connection to nature were paramount. The Jaman remind us that civilization does not always follow a linear path, and that technological advancement is only one measure of cultural sophistication. In many ways, the Jaman were ahead of their time, demonstrating that humans can cultivate beauty, meaning, and social complexity even in societies that do not conform to conventional models of development. Perhaps what is most striking about the Jamin is their quiet ingenuity. While they left no written records, no monumental palaces, and no stone pyramids, their art, settlements, and material culture speak volumes. Their civilization invites us to reconsider our definitions of progress and sophistication. In the silent, cord-marked pottery, in the careful construction of pit dwellings, and in the haunting gaze of Dogo figurines, we glimpse a people whose lives were rich, interconnected, and deeply thoughtful. The Jamin story encourages reflection on the diversity of human experience, illustrating that complexity, creativity, and cultural depth are not confined to the pages of history books, but are often etched in the everyday objects, homes, and art of societies long vanished. In contemplating the Jamin, one is struck by the enduring beauty of a civilization that thrived in what many would have considered impossible circumstances. The Kingdom of Punt remains one of the most elusive and fascinating civilizations of the ancient world. Known primarily through Egyptian records, Punt was described as a land of great wealth, abundant resources, and mysterious peoples, yet its precise location has eluded historians and archaeologists for centuries. Ancient Egyptians referred to it as Tanetjer, or God's Land, and expeditions to Punt were considered both dangerous and sacred undertakings. The kingdom provided luxury goods that were highly prized in Egypt: incense, myrrh, ebony, gold, ivory, exotic animals, and precious stones. These items were not merely commodities. They carried spiritual and cultural significance, particularly incense and myrrh, which were used in religious rituals and temple ceremonies. The Egyptians' obsession with Punt speaks to its importance, yet the kingdom itself remains shrouded in mystery, like a distant star glimpsed through the haze of time. What makes Punt particularly intriguing is the sense that it existed on the margins of the known world. Unlike neighboring regions that have left tangible ruins or inscriptions, Punt has produced almost no physical evidence to confirm its existence as a fixed geographic entity. Scholars have proposed locations ranging from the Horn of Africa, modern-day Somalia, Eritrea, Ethiopia, to the southern Arabian Peninsula. Despite these theories, no definitive archaeological site has been identified, leaving Punt suspended in history as a civilization of stories. This uncertainty fuels the imagination, prompting us to consider that some societies may leave their mark not through buildings or monuments, but through the influence they exert on others, shaping economies, beliefs, and cultural practices indirectly. Egyptian expeditions to Punt were remarkable undertakings that illustrate the extraordinary lengths civilizations would go to engage with this enigmatic land. Reliefs and inscriptions from the reigns of pharaohs like Hatshepsut depict elaborate voyages across the Red Sea, with ships laden with gifts and crewed by sailors, artisans, and diplomats. The famous reliefs at Hatshepsut's mortuary temple in Deir el-Bahri show Puntite dwellings built on stilts, lush vegetation, and exotic wildlife, including baboons and giraffes. These depictions convey a society that, while seen through the lens of Egyptian imagination, seems both rich and sophisticated. Punt emerges as a land where the natural world and human life are intertwined in ways that seemed magical or even divine to outsiders, further enhancing its aura of mystery. The people of Punt themselves remain enigmatic. Egyptian record described them as having distinctive physical features, unique clothing, and complex social structures, but beyond these artistic representations, little is known. Were they organized into a centralized kingdom or a network of city-states? Did they possess their own writing system or language, now lost to time? The absence of direct evidence allows Punt to occupy a liminal space between history and legend. It is a civilization defined almost entirely by the perceptions and ambitions of another culture, raising questions about how we reconstruct the past and whose perspective is privileged in historical narratives. Trade with Punt reveals the deep interconnection between civilizations, even when one remains largely invisible. The goods imported from Punt were not only valuable for their rarity, but also for their symbolic significance. Frankincense and myrrh, for example, were integral to Egyptian rituals, linking Punt to the spiritual and religious life of one of the most powerful empires of antiquity. Gold, ivory, and exotic animals reinforced social hierarchies and showcased the pharaoh's wealth and divine favor. In this sense, Punt exerted influence far beyond its borders, shaping culture, religion, and even politics in a neighboring empire while remaining almost completely hidden from the historical record itself. Punt's elusiveness also speaks to the fragility of human memory and the passage of time. While grand civilizations like Egypt, Mesopotamia, or Greece left behind monumental architecture, written histories, and enduring legacies, Punt's story survives largely through the lens of another culture. It is a civilization preserved in second-hand accounts, in cargo manifests, and in the imaginative depictions of foreign artists. This creates a dual sense of fascination and melancholy. Punt existed, thrived, and shaped human history, yet its own voice remained silent. It is a civilization defined as much by absence as presence, a shadow whose contours we can only sketch through fragments and interpretations. The mystery of Punt also invites reflection on the nature of historical knowledge. Most of what we know comes from Egyptian inscriptions, but these are not neutral records. They were created for political, religious, and propagandistic purposes. Hatshepsut's depictions of Punt emphasize abundance, exoticism, and the pharaoh's authority, rather than providing an objective ethnographic account. This means that our understanding of Punt is filtered through the cultural lens of a civilization thousands of miles away, leaving us to question what is fact, embellishment, or imagination. In this tension between what is known and what is unknown lies the essence of Punt's allure. It is a civilization that should not exist in the historical record in such detail, and yet it does, tantalizingly, through the fragments of another culture's gaze. Ultimately, Punt exemplifies the delicate interplay between reality and myth in human history. Its riches, people, and lands were real enough to motivate long, dangerous expeditions, yet its physical footprint has largely disappeared. The kingdom challenges our conventional understanding of what it means for a civilization to exist. Is it the material legacy it leaves behind, the stories recorded by others, or the influence it exerts across time and space? Punt occupies a liminal space where imagination and archaeology intersect, reminding us that history is not only about what survives, but also about what can be inferred, reconstructed, and dreamed from absence. The story of Punt closes this chapter of impossible civilizations with a quiet meditation on human perception and memory. Here is a society that existed in shadow, whose influence shaped one of history's greatest empires, yet whose own story remains tantalizingly incomplete. Punt invites us to imagine worlds beyond our sight, reminding us that the tapestry of human history is far richer, stranger, and more intricate than the physical record alone can reveal. In its mystery, Punt speaks softly across the centuries, whispering of trade, travel, abundance, and a civilization that, though almost lost, continues to capture the imagination and curiosity of all who seek to understand the past. As we come to the close of our journey through the most bizarre civilizations that should not have existed, a subtle yet profound pattern begins to emerge. Across continents, climates, and millennia, these societies share a remarkable trait. They flourished in ways that challenge conventional understanding, often in environments or circumstances where survival seemed improbable. From the hunter-gatherers who constructed Göbekli Tepe's monumental pillars long before agriculture, to the desert-dwelling Nabateans who carved Petra into cliffs, each civilization demonstrates that human ingenuity does not always follow linear logic. These cultures remind us that progress, sophistication, and creativity are not strictly tied to technological advancement or predictable social hierarchies. Instead, they often emerge in the interplay of necessity, opportunity, belief, and sheer imagination. A striking theme across these impossible civilizations is the contrast between what is expected and what is realized. Many arose in locations that appeared inhospitable. The Garamantes thrived deep within the Sahara. The Axumites flourished in mountainous terrain with scarce arable land, and the Jaman people sustained complex settlements long before agriculture became dominant. In each case, human adaptation, ingenuity, and an intimate understanding of local resources allowed societies to surpass expectations. These civilizations demonstrate that environmental limitations are not absolute constraints. They are challenges that can inspire novel solutions, from hydraulic systems and underground canals to urban layouts without streets. The lesson is clear. When humanity is faced with scarcity or difficulty, creativity and resilience often flourish most brilliantly. Equally compelling is the theme of hidden knowledge or lost wisdom. Many of these civilizations, such as Sanxingdui, the Olmec, or Punt, left behind fragments, colossal heads, bronze masks, mysterious writings, or second-hand accounts. But the full scope of their achievements remains unknown. Their legacies invite speculation and reflection, creating a delicate tension between the known and the unknowable. We are reminded that history is rarely a complete record. It is a mosaic of fragments, impressions, and silences. In these silences, our imagination takes flight, allowing us to sense the richness, complexity, and depth of human experience that has been partially obscured by time. These gaps in knowledge are not merely frustrating. They're a space where curiosity and wonder thrive. Another recurring element is the unexpected sophistication of social, spiritual, and artistic life. Many of these civilizations, such as the Indus Valley, the Minoans, and the Jaman, demonstrate that order, ritual, and cultural expression can emerge without centralized authority or aggressive conquest. Cities without kings, houses without streets, and communities deeply attuned to spiritual practice challenge the assumption that hierarchy and militarization are prerequisites for complexity. Similarly, the art and architecture, from the massive stone facades of Petra to the intricate pottery of the Jaman, from Olmec heads to Sanxingdui masks, reflect a profound commitment to aesthetics, ritual, and symbolism. In these creations, we witness the universality of human expression, a desire to shape the environment, to honor the unseen, and to leave a trace beyond the limits of individual life. These civilizations also underscore the fragile and ephemeral nature of human achievement. Many of them vanished suddenly or left minimal traces. The sudden burial of Göbekli Tepe, the disappearance of Sanxingdui, the absorption of the Nabateans into the Roman Empire, or the elusive memory of Punt. Their rise and fall illustrate that even extraordinary societies are vulnerable to environmental shifts, economic disruptions, and the passage of time. Yet their impact is enduring, not because of monumental armies or vast conquests, but through influence, innovation, and inspiration. Civilization, it seems, is not solely measured by permanence, but by the ideas, structures, and legacies that ripple forward, shaping those who come after. Perhaps most importantly, these impossible civilizations remind us of the remarkable breadth of human potential. Across time and space, humans have demonstrated a capacity to dream, to experiment, and to thrive in the face of uncertainty. These societies teach us that the expected path of history, a linear march from primitive to advanced, is far too simplistic. Innovation often emerges in moments of anomaly, in places that defy prediction, and in societies that reject the conventional rules of their time. They challenge our assumptions, broaden our perspective, and invite us to consider the infinite possibilities of human creativity. In reflecting on these civilizations, there is also a poetic dimension. They exist not only as historical phenomena, but as reminders of mystery, wonder, and curiosity. Listening to the silent echoes of Göbekli Tepe, the Olmec, or Punt, we are invited into a contemplative space where fact meets imagination. Their stories unfold slowly, like the gentle turning of a page in a vast, ancient book, sometimes clear, sometimes obscured, but always compelling. This is the essence of their fascination. They are both real and enigmatic, tangible yet elusive, leaving us suspended between certainty and speculation. Ultimately, the story of these impossible civilizations is also a story of continuity. Across continents and eras, human beings have repeatedly proven that ingenuity, adaptation, and creativity know no boundaries. The cities, artifacts, and rituals they left behind are more than relics. They are evidence of enduring human curiosity, courage, and vision. In their defiance of expectation, they whisper a simple yet profound truth. Humans are capable of creating the extraordinary, even under conditions that seem impossible. As the echoes of these civilizations fade into the quiet of history, we are left with a sense of awe and reflection. We recognize that history is not only a record of what exists, but also a tapestry of the improbable, the mysterious, and the extraordinary. Each society we have explored serves as a mirror, reflecting not only the past, but also the possibilities of what humanity can achieve. They challenge us to look beyond the obvious, to value curiosity over certainty, and to embrace the unknown with reverence and wonder. In the end, the pattern behind the impossible is clear. Human creativity, resilience, and imagination are limitless. These civilizations teach us that history is not a simple story of survival or conquest, but a complex interplay of vision, environment, and human spirit. They remind us that the past is full of surprises, that brilliance often appears where we least expect it, and that even the quietest whispers of forgotten peoples can resonate across the millennia. In their lives, art, and legacies, these civilizations invite us to marvel, to dream, and to remember that the extraordinary is always possible, even in worlds that seem impossible at first glance.